I've walked that ridge so many nights I could almost do it blindfolded. The road snakes between pines like an old scar, just wide enough for the truck's tires, with a lookout tower that leans more each year. On clear nights, you can see the valley lights if you squint through the mist. But most nights, it's just you, the wind, and the sound of your own steps echoing back from the trees. People imagine ranger work as busy. Rescues, radio calls, bears in trash cans. Mostly, it's silence. You learn to hear small things. The sigh of the roof, the hum of the generator, your heartbeat when the forest goes still. Time moves different out there. You start measuring nights by the way the coffee cools, or how many times you tell yourself, one more round before dawn. That night began no different. The air felt heavy, swollen with the promise of rain. I remember the smell, pine sap and damp soil, sweet, grounding. I thought it'd be an easy shift. Rain usually keeps trouble away. But there was something about the quiet that night, a kind of waiting, like the whole forest had taken a breath and was holding it. And then it came. Not thunder, not wind. Something smaller, sharper. 3 clear notes, like someone whistling from inside the dark. At first, I thought I imagined it. The storm had started, hard rain drumming against the roof, wind rattling the shutters. But between gusts, the whistle came again. 3 notes, low, calm. It didn't sound panicked. It sounded patient. I stepped outside, the rain slanting sideways, soaking through my jacket in seconds. The beam from my flashlight carved through the mist, but there was nothing out there except shifting shadows. Then the whistle again, a little softer, a little further. I radioed dispatch, half by protocol, half for company. "You hear anyone whistling out there tonight?" I asked. Static, then her voice. Negative. Probably the wind singing through the trees, she laughed. I tried to laugh too, but something in me stayed listening. The rain had that silver look when the light hit it, like the world was behind a curtain. I waited a minute, maybe more, and the sound came again, same 3 notes, the same distance away. Whoever it was, they weren't moving. Or maybe they were, exactly in step with me. And for some reason, I still don't understand. I stepped off the porch. The path sloped downhill, slick with mud. Every sound felt magnified. Branches snapping, water running off roots, the hiss of rain on leaves. I kept the beam steady, scanning left to right, trying to catch motion. The whistle came again, not echoing, not distorted, just there. 3 notes. Always the same tone, same pause between them. It had rhythm, like it was waiting for me to answer. "Ranger service," I called. My voice got swallowed by the storm. "If you can hear me, stay where you are." Nothing. Then, 3 notes again. I told myself it was duty, that I couldn't ignore someone who might be out there. But deep down, it wasn't duty. It was curiosity dressed up as responsibility. Each time I stopped, the sound stopped too. When I moved, it followed, always keeping the same distance, like it didn't want to be found, only led. After a while, I realized I'd been walking far longer than I meant to. The slope had flattened, and the air felt heavier, colder. I turned to look back up the ridge. The cabin light was gone. And that's when the whistle stopped completely. The silence after a storm sound cuts out is its own kind of noise. I stood there letting the rain run down my collar, listening so hard my ears rang. Nothing, just water and wind. I tried calling again, louder this time. Still no answer. I should have turned back right then, but I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for something I couldn't name. Then came another sound, faint behind me. A footstep maybe, or something heavy shifting on wet ground. I turned fast, light cutting through rain. Just trees, no movement, no shape. Wind, I said out loud, as if saying it made it true. I started back uphill, slower now. Every few steps, I'd hear it. Not the whistle this time, but the whisper of branches brushing overhead, like they were keeping pace. The forest has ways of making you feel seen without showing you who's looking. Halfway up the ridge, the whistle returned. Softer, higher, distant now. It came from the direction I'd just left. The same 3 notes. Only this time I didn't follow. I just wanted to be back inside. But as I climbed, I realized something strange. The sound wasn't behind me anymore. It was above. By the time I saw the glow of the cabin window, the storm had turned to drizzle. I don't remember the last few minutes of that walk, only the relief that hit when my boots found solid ground again. I stepped under the overhang, caught my breath, and looked back at the ridge. The trees moved in waves, restless but organized, like they were passing something between them. Then the whistle again, 2 notes this time, and the third cut off halfway, as if someone ran out of air mid-breath. I waited for it to finish. It didn't. Inside, the cabin smelled like wet wood and burnt coffee. I hung my jacket, wrote a quick note in the log, heard a whistle near the creek, checked area, no contact. My handwriting looked steadier than I felt. I poured the rest of the coffee, bitter and lukewarm, and told myself it had to be the wind. The mind plays tricks when the world gets too quiet. Still, the thought kept pressing at me. Wind doesn't whistle 3 clean notes. The radio crackled once, faint static. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard those same 3 notes buried inside the noise. I turned the dial. Static nothing. I switched the radio off. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Sometime later, I don't know how long, I went to check the window latch. The glass had fogged at the corners from the damp air, and there, faint but clear, were 5 small smudges. They weren't streaks from rain. They were fingerprints, small ones, lower than mine would be, and too close together for an adult. I stared for a long moment before stepping outside. The ground below was just mud and puddles. No tracks, no sign anyone had been there. The rain had washed the world smooth. I wiped the glass clean, half convincing myself I'd leaned against it earlier. But when I went back inside, the radio, though turned off, gave one quick pulse of static. Inside that burst, I could swear I heard it again. 3 notes. It faded like a breath in a cold room. I sat down at the desk, waiting for the hum of the generator to drown the sound. But even when it did, I kept hearing that unfinished tune somewhere behind it, like memory replaying on its own. And that's when it occurred to me. Maybe the whistle wasn't outside anymore. When daylight finally came, the forest looked ordinary again, the kind of clean morning that makes you doubt the night before. Sunlight spilled through the wet branches, and the world smelled new. I did the usual checks, gates, logs, fuel lines. Everything was fine, too fine. The dispatcher joked when I called in. "Hear the mountain talk again, Ranger." I said something like, "Guess it's got a good voice." When I walked past the window, the smudges were gone. The glass was spotless, shining with morning light. For a second, I felt silly for believing any of it had been real. I even hummed the tune to myself, trying to get the rhythm right, but it never came out right. The third note always died halfway through, like something unfinished trying to start again. I packed up early that day, told myself I'd sleep through the afternoon. I remember closing the door and hearing how normal that click sounded, like punctuation at the end of a story. That night, while cleaning my boots, I found a thin line of dried mud inside the heel, on the inside where it shouldn't be. Just a streak, the color of the ridge soil. I wiped it off, not thinking much of it. Only later did it feel strange, like something had followed me in. I still take that ridge sometimes. I try to tell myself the story's nothing special, just another odd night in bad weather. I even tell the new rangers a version of it, the safe version. Whistle, storm, nothing there. But halfway down the slope, there's a place where the trees open wide and the wind catches just right. And when it does, I hear it again. 3 notes, faint, steady, always the same distance away. I never stop now. I keep walking. Same pace, same breath. If you ignore it, it fades. Or maybe it just waits. On still nights, when I'm closing up the cabin and the rain starts again, I glance at that same window. Sometimes it fogs just enough to show the faint outline of something. Not clear, not strong, but shaped like a small hand pressed against the glass, facing inward. I don't check anymore. I just let it fade. You learn what belongs to you and what doesn't. The ridge keeps its secrets. The forest keeps its sounds. The whistle, it belongs to the part of the world that stays just out of reach, close enough to follow, never close enough to see. When the wind moves through the pines, it carries those 3 notes again. Soft, steady, unfinished. And every time I hear it, I find myself waiting, just to see if, after all these years, that last note ever finds its end.